Jeremy Hambly of TheQuartering is now facing a threat of a class action lawsuit for his false flagging and other untoward behavior online. We're getting that today on The Legal Mindset. We teach you to be your own judge. I'm Andrew Esquire, American attorney. So in case you guys haven't been paying attention, Jeremy Hambly, aka TheQuartering, is in a deep online battle right now over allegations of false flagging behavior, targeting detractors on YouTube as people end up speaking up, doing live streams, putting up videos. They're being taken down. They're being hit with strikes. They're being flagged through the YouTube system. So there's this deep battle going on right now with Jeremy Hambly, which we covered previously. But now we have a new threat of a class action lawsuit for his false flagging behavior and alleged abuse of the DMCA system. So we're going to get at it today, as well as some of the recent developments, which kind of add another light to this and perhaps another angle for this legally. So let's get into first some of the things that have been going down recently. So one of the things that happened very recently was Jeremy Hambly had this TISM podcast that he did with Bering and Count Dankula, and that was deleted or taken down today. Now, initially, the reaction by Jeremy was as follows, saying, hey, every live stream I've ever done has now disappeared from YouTube, and my podcast channel with two friends, that's the TISM podcast with Bering and Count Dankula, seems to have been banned. I'm sure it's totally not false flaggers and just a coincidence. So saying there, I'm sure it's totally not false flaggers and just a coincidence. So going to accusing others of false flagging at first. Well, hours later, he goes back to say, look, this was my fault. I was not clear on the videos I wanted my editor to delete. I'm working to restore what I can, and we'll give the boys all the episodes of TISM to re-upload 100%. I've just been testing a theory that live streams drag channels down. And of course, he was community noted immediately saying these videos were actually deleted by him unilaterally. So that podcast that he did with two others deleted unilaterally by him. That's a potential legal problem. This was followed up, of course, by many others who commented on this, such as Shoe on Head, saying, hey, why would you, even imply that this was false flagged, because it's kind of clear to see through the system which ones are false flagged, which ones are not, which ones are banned. So it's very easy to tell. So he was kind of presenting himself as the victim there. And Bering, even his podcast co-host, who had the episodes which he and Count Dankula were members of deleted, showed kind of the evolution here. The haters got our channel banned, to this is Bering's fault, to it must be a YouTube glitch, to it's totally my editor's fault. Advising him to stop and get some help, which I think is the right advice there. He also brought out the DMs with Jeremy, and if you see over here with this kind of back and forth, Bering says, are you going to flag the channels? And TheQuartering responds, yeah, I'm flagging everyone. I'm calling my rep. Everyone is getting banned. Now, Jeremy may be joking there, but this is not a time at which he should be really joking around, because in the midst of people that have very real claims against them, a judge can look at things and say, you know what? I don't know whether he's being sarcastic or not. We have to get discovery here. I'm not sure. His previous conversations with Null and other folks, and even his public post, make comments about him getting videos taken down, going to war, nuking everybody, taking all of their channels out, wiping them off on the internet. So, when he says this and says, everyone is crooked, remember, I can ban anyone I want, it's on. He may very well have been serious about that. And it seems like this is a case in which he could be behind this. All the evidence is pointing to him potentially being behind this based on his communications at large. So that brings us to getting down the line when we see this channel here, the TISM, the Incredible Salt Mine, which was banned. It brings us to the lawsuit. So this lawsuit was brought up by Chad Hughes, who threatens here, the Jermageddon begins Monday morning. If Keno Casino Clips isn't restored, we are drafting the document now for Team YouTube and Google, Mr. Jeremy Hambly and Melanie Mack. This is an opt-in with my law firm agreeing to take on if at least 5 creators join. TheQuartering blocked me because I kept getting him ratioed with the truth, but he can't play power games against people who aren't afraid of his power and live in the real world. Andy Worski should be restored too. We need an apology from Jeremy as well. Accountability. He even dragged Chrissy Mayer into this and illegally forced her hand. That's not right. And they have this lawsuit drafted, and I have kind of the cover copy here. They have United States District Court Central District of California. Users affected by Jeremy Hambly, including but not limited to Keno Casino clips against Jeremy Hambly, Alphabet, YouTube, etc. So this is kind of the cover for a potential class action. So let's get into whether or not this thing is going to hold weight and what I think. So first of all, with this, the applicable law for misrepresentation is under Section 512F, which creates a private right of action for knowingly materially misrepresenting something in a DMCA takedown. So in this case, if you falsely flag a channel and you know, hey, this thing is clearly fair use, or, this thing is something that is clearly permissible and I'm just flagging it to flag it, I'm flagging because I don't like them, etc. Yeah, that's not permitted. That gives you a private right of action under 512F. Other false flags that are not DMCA, so other things that were submitted falsely or problematic, other causes would fall under tortious interference of contract. So that's something separate. That's a separate civil claim that could be brought. In addition, Dankula and Bering, when they talk about the TISM podcast, depending on how they would want to deal with this, they might even have some sort of cause of action there because they would have a joint copyright ownership claim. So Jeremy, essentially as 1/3 owner of that, did not, unless there's an agreement elsewise, have permission to just unilaterally delete stuff. Generally, that's something that you have to come to a consensus on, and you have to all agree, hey, this is what we're doing before you delete something and get rid of that. So that's a separate thing for those two based on that interaction. So what would happen with the class? Well, with the class action, I actually don't think this class action will go anywhere. Here's the reason why. Class actions are rarely permitted for fair use analysis and fair use cases because it's on a video by video analysis. You go through each video and you say, is this fair use? It's hard to lump 5, 10, 12, 30 videos together and say, yeah, they're all fair use. No, one could be fair use and another couldn't. That's how fair use works. That is the nature of fair use. If you think about the Ethan Klein case where he's facing Denims, Casey Tron, and Frogan, in that case, Denims could, for example, prevail and Frogan could lose. That's very much possible. Of course, Casey Tron has already settled, so she's already taken the L. In each particular case, they have to analyze the video to see, okay, exactly how much was used, how was it transformative, what's the commercial nature. That's something that's case by case. So in this case, it would be much better and smarter if the individual lawsuits have a higher chance of success. It'd also be quicker, 6 months versus 2 years. Also, well-drafted cases are going to have a huge possibility of surviving a motion to dismiss, about a 70 to 80% chance if they're really well written in this manner. And because the point of a lawsuit against Jeremy Hambly in TheQuartering is for nuisance value, to get him to settle. It's not to go through trial and to win. It's not to get some sort of massive thing after a jury verdict, etc. It's to get him to settle this, to get it to go away, because essentially it's going to cost him attorney's fees, time, discovery. He's going to have all his emails out there, all of his communications, and he doesn't want that. So what is that? Well, that is about in the case of nuisance value, defending even one federal DMCA case can cost $50K to $300K. So anywhere in that range is very much reasonable for a federal DMCA case. So if he's trying to quickly settle these cases, and I've worked on these sort of situations when I was corporate counsel and dealing with these sorts of transactions, you can see these settled for $5K, $10K, $20K, $25K, very routinely, just as a go away cost, as a, hey, we don't want to spend even our staff time on this. Let's just get rid of this for, $5K, $10K, $20K. And that could be very, very reasonable if it was one person. But the problem is this could be dozens of people, dozens of creators coming after Hambly. So for example, if you had a dozen cases at $10K each, well, then you've easily got over $100K. It's death by 1,000 cuts. And rumors are spreading, of course, that Jeremy Hambly is in a dire financial situation. So here's my final judgment. Hambly is digging himself deeper in with potential legal trouble in what he's saying. Now, not everything he's done is necessarily illegal. The person in the original post commented about Chrissy Mayer. Nothing about his sort of relationship with Chrissy Mayer appears to be illegal or merit a lawsuit there. That seems to be a stretch. However, some of these comments he's making about flagging channels, etc., or the desire to flag channels, desire to ban people, or his influence with YouTube, those could be used against him. That is something that potentially eventually could be damaging for Jeremy. And reports of his dire financial situation put an incentive on small creators to file these nuisance claims. And they can go to a single law firm, go to that one law firm, and that law firm can come up with a very good form, a very good strategy for doing this, and file all of these small lawsuits in order to get Jeremy to be hit with that nuisance value that could exceed 100K, 200K, etc. if he settled these all out. So Jeremy could be in some hot water. But I want to know what you guys think. Is Jeremy Hambly of TheQuartering finished? Let me know in the comments below, and I will catch you on the next one.